I think that we made the best winter sneaker of all time with the Mugs 2. It's made with the highest quality American tan leather from Horween. It's 100% real double-faced sheepskin wool, made by Goral in England, known for making some of the most durably built sneakers in the entire world. And most importantly, there's no visible shearling popping out anywhere, so you maintain that look of a regular sneaker with all the warmth of a shearling lined winter boot on the inside. And I haven't seen anything even close to being as perfect of a winter sneaker as the Mugs 2, but that doesn't mean it's not without its flaws and faults and compromises. So this year, we took all the feedback from the Mugs 2 owners and made the Mugs 3. So we're gonna run this through our tests, cut it in half to really see what we changed and why the mugs sell out so fast, and ultimately to see if you can prove me wrong about this being the best and closest to the perfect winter sneaker that money can buy. So then what are these shoes? Well, the brand is Resoleable x Goral. The style is the Mugs 3. They weigh 1 pound 9 ounces. They retail for 390 pounds and they're made in England. And the way that we position this is basically this whole video. And if you order a pair of these, they're expected to be delivered in December. We're also gonna be covering and relaunching the Mugs 2. So the brand is Resoleable x Goral. The style is the Mugs 2. They weigh 1 pound 6 ounces. They retail for 335 pounds. And they're also made in England. And if you want to see more about the Mugs 2, we'll put links to the launch videos we did last year of these below. And if you order a pair of the Mugs 2, they're expected to be delivered in October. And that's not it. We got one more of the Mugs family that's pretty fun, and it's super low quantities. It's the slugs. So the brand is Resoleable and Goral. The style is the slugs. They weigh 15 ounces. They retail for 270 pounds, made in England as well. And what this is essentially the same thing we did with Mugs, trying to make a manly Ugg. We tried to make a manly Tasman. You know, this is a really, really popular sneaker. It's really easy to put on. It's warm. I guess it's not a sneaker. It's more of like a slide or a slipper or mule. And I like it. I want a pair. So I was like, Goral, let's make like a really limited batch of those. We'll call them slugs, slide Uggs, slipper Uggs. And we're doing super low quantities of these, and we might only do one batch of them. So if you want any of these, be sure to check them out via links in the description, because it's a huge support of how we're able to do all of this by cutting apart several brand new products every single week, week after week. These collaborations are a big part of how we can afford to do it. So let's start looking at these and figure out what we actually changed, all the details of it. Right off the bat, you can see why there aren't many companies that are actually making a shearling winter sneaker. That's because it's just ridiculously expensive to make one. Because shearling is very expensive. It's really hard to work with. It's hard to make look manly because you're trying to hide all the fur. It's hard to make it look like a sneaker without being overly puffy. And shearling is just generally really hard to deal with. It gets everywhere when you're cutting it. It gets in the noses of all the people that are sewing these and cutting these out and making these shoes. It gums up all the machines with all those little teeny wool fibers that you almost can't even perceive. Some of these really tight fibers, they just get everywhere. And so what that means is for these giant companies, it's really, really hard for them to scale a shearling shoe. That's why I think UGG is moving away from shearling and going towards their like fake shearling. So then what is this really hard to work with wool that we actually use? Well, like I mentioned, it's a true twin-face sheepskin, which means that it's real shearling, and all those little wool fibers are still attached to the skin of the animal that grew it out of the animal, which means it sheds a lot less, it's a lot more durable, it's a lot more natural, it maintains a lot of the lanolin on the inside. And you've seen, like we did this video and the UGG alternatives, and there's a clear and distinct difference between fake wool and real twin face sheepskin, even compared to single face sheepskin. We went with a 10mm long shearling, so a little bit shorter than what UGG used, because I don't want to be super puffy while still maintaining some of the insulating factors and all the beautiful aspects of one of my favorite natural materials, which is wool. And the hides that we use are sourced directly from Ireland and retanned in Poland. And the leather that all that wool is attached to is 1.5mm thick, so right in that sneaker thickness, so meaning it's really malleable, it's really warm, surprisingly breathable, but it can absorb a decent amount of water if you're walking around in puddles all day and you don't condition them. Because it is that bottom side, the inside part of the leather, it absorbs water more than if it were a shearling flipped out. So how do we adjust that in the Mugs 3? In the coolest way possible, the most Resoleable way possible. We just throw more leather at the problem. Instead of these sides being exposed like the Mugs 2, we covered it all in leather. And what that does is it makes these more warm, it's more durable, more water resistant, because the leather we used is a naked Kudu. It's a CF sted leather, it's 1.8mm thick, has a lot of that grain. And if you don't know what a Kudu is, it's one of the coolest animals in Africa. It's one of the animals on my to hunt list. Hey, we're talking about leather, we're talking about shearling. Hunting goes hand in hand. They're cool, big spiral horns, but the reason we chose Kudu over other leathers, aside from it being really cool and having cool textures and just being an awesome leather, it's really, really hard wearing for how thin it is. It's really soft and supple. It has this really unique sheen, and they just pack this leather full of oils and conditioners and waxes, so it has this natural water repellent properties that you don't get from just raw backside of shearling. So Kudu was the perfect leather of choice. And it's the first time I think we've even reviewed Kudu. So we'll probably do a separate video on Kudu with all these different features and stuff. But you can see from the burn test, all those oils that I talked about being infused into it and how water resistant it is from that waterproof test that we did. And we did the puncture test. It took 124 pounds to puncture through, and this leather is 1.8 millimeters thick. So combine that with the leather in the shearling, you're about 3 millimeters thick of leather. But because it's separate layers and all those properties of Kudu, it's really malleable, it's really flexible compared to boot thickness leathers. So then what is the trade-off? Well, obviously it's gonna be hotter because you're locking more of that heat on the inside of your shoe, which could be good or bad depending on what you're looking for, and that's why we're still offering the Mugs 2. Because the goal with this is to give you a spectrum to choose from casual and like the least insulating and least warm, all the way up to the most warm, the most boot-like, the most insulated, the most durable and grippy, and then the Mugs 2 right in between. And then if we look at the inside of the lining, we basically already covered it because it is that shearling. And I think part of why these work so well and why people love them so much and why I love them so much is when your foot is inside of a pair of Mugs, it's completely wrapped in nothing but wool. No part of your foot touches anything but that really thick, warm wool. So why do I love wool so much besides it being one of nature's perfect insulating fibers that's been developed over millions of years through trial and error of survival of the fittest, natural selection to cover these cute little wool sheep in their own warm blanket that we happen to just use to make our pair of Mugs out of? Well, wool is ridiculously durable, resilient, and resistant to compression. Those wool fibers can be stretched 50% while wet without breaking, 30% while dry. It's really breathable because of the moisture wicking aspects of it. It can hold 30% of its weight in water without even feeling wet and without losing any of its insulating factor. All the air trapped between those dense little wool fibers trap the air, creating a barrier between you and the outside world. It's really odor resistant because those little wool fibers absorb all your sweat and vapor off your foot, preventing bacteria growth and an unpleasant smell because it also has lanolin in it, which is one of nature's best natural conditioners for leather and for wool that helps protect the fibers, which helps prevent bacterial growth. And to top it off, wool fibers are ridiculously strong. You can bend them 20,000 times without breaking. And maybe coolest and least relevant to the Mugs is wool is really fire resistant. It's self-extinguishing, even so much so that early firefighting pants, some of them were made out of wool because of that fire resistant tendency. It ends up being a really good fiber from anything from the coldest of the cold to the hottest of hots. It's just an awesome fiber. But all that wool is no good if the shoe starts falling apart after a few months of wear like most sneakers. And that's why we went with Goral, who is known for making arguably the most durable sneakers in the world because of one thing that they do that nobody else does. They were the first ones to do it. I think maybe some other brands have started doing it, but they can claim that they're the original, and that's a Blake stitched veg tan insole. You usually only see Blake stitches inside of boots because sneakers usually don't last long enough to see the benefits of the extra durability of a Blake stitch, especially when it comes time to resole them. It's not like nobody's resoling a pair of Converse. But with this expensive of a sneaker with this high quality materials, you have to be able to resole it to get the worth out of it. So where most sneakers are either Strobel stitched, cemented, or sidewall stitched with a cup sole, not only does Goral have that Blake stitch on the inside, but it's also a cup sole that's cemented and sidewall stitched. And so the benefit of that is when you do wear out that outsole and this high quality materials and the upper is perfectly fine, just like broken into the shape of your foot, the wool is packed down exactly how you need. Instead of throwing it away, you just take it to any cobbler that's worth his salt, and all they do is undo these stitches, pull the old outsole off, glue the new one on, and run another stitch line around it. So they can do it really quick, they can do it really cheap, and you can get as much longevity and lifespan out of these shoes as possible. But speaking of the outsole, you might notice there's a pretty distinct difference between the 2 and the 3, and it's something that we changed on the Mugs 3 based off of a lot of really good feedback we got from the buyers of the Mugs 2 that wanted a more rugged, a little more grippy outsole that could handle the snow and ice a lot better. That's why we went with the Vibram Christie cup sole. It's the exact same pattern as the regular Christie that's been a hugely popular outsole of choice for manual labor jobs, but this is the cup sole version. So you get a little bit harder rubber to 60 Shore A. It's a cup sole, so you can do that sidewall stitch, and it looks a little bit more like a sneaker. It has a lot deeper grooves and ridges throughout here, so you can displace that water and it grips on ice and snow a lot better. We did the puncture test on it, took 172 pounds to puncture through. And so with this outsole, the goal was to have the comfort of a sneaker, but the durability of the boot. And it shades it a little bit more closer to that boot side of things because it is a grippier, it's more rugged, it's more durable, it looks a lot more aggressive. But there are some inherent downsides to going with a more boot style outsole, and that is the fact that it looks a lot more like a boot. So you lose some of that like sneak sneaker, incognito sneaker, shearling line shoe look, because it starts to look a little bit more like a boot, which I'm totally fine with. I like the more aggressive look. I like the boot look generally. And something cool that Goral's doing for this is, if this is not your style, they're still gonna allow the Mugs 2 outsole to be an option for the Mugs 3, and then also you can get the Vibram outsole on the Mugs 2. And so that adds a couple extra points on this spectrum from more casual all the way up to a warm winter boot, where it goes slugs, Mugs 2 with the regular outsole, Mugs 2 with the Vibram outsole, Mugs 3 with the regular outsole, Mugs 3 with the Vibram outsole. And the beauty is you can always try a new outsole when you wear them out, because the upper is going to last a lot longer than the outsole, and because that Blake stitch holds all that upper together, no matter how terrible the cobbler is, there's a good chance he's not going to be able to screw it up, because that Blake stitch is so integral to the durability and the structure of this boot. And it just looks so cool. I didn't even know this was an outsole option until Goral sent it to me. I was like, how did I not know this existed? This is literally the perfect outsole for Mugs, if you don't mind a little bit of extra ruggedy, like boot style look to it. So now let's cut these Mugs 3 in half and the slugs while we're at it, to check out what's on the inside, if there's anything we changed on the inside, and how all these layers connect and how they look compared to the Mugs 2. This will be a tough one. I better get a 10 on this one. Beautiful. All right, we got them both cut in half, so let's see what's in the slugs first. And the Mugs 3. Okay, now we got all 3 cut in half, and you can see that they all share the exact same style of construction that's really put Goral on the map to be arguably the most durable sneaker maker in the entire world, because you can see that sidewall stitch that goes all the way to the inside. You can see this little insole that's removable, that lasting material, which is that veg tan leather that shapes the shape of your foot, which is also a material that doesn't smell as bad as synthetics. You're double layered up on some of the best natural materials in the entire world. You can see this yellow feeling on the inside here is also wool, a little more insulating factor between you and the ground, a little bit of extra squish. You can see the gusset that we put into the tongue to prevent any water or snow melting getting to the inside of your shoe. And now you can see what I meant by all these layers of leather with that outside kudu backed by the shearling leather and the shearling itself. It is about as thick as a boot leather, but because the properties in kudu and the shearling, you end up with a really unique feeling shoe. It's still protective, it's still malleable, it's warm, it still is a heavy duty leather on the outside, and it's kudu. It's so cool. And so you end up with 3 of the coolest materials that you see in boots, with the veg tan insole being just a classic material in all high quality footwear, with the shearling being that perfect material that nature's created over millions of years, and with that kudu leather with those unique properties and the flexibility, the malleability, all to make the Mugs 3, which is truly a unique shoe on the entire market. And that's why in this video, I'm pretty confident that it is the best winter sneaker that money can buy, and it's as close as we've ever come to being the perfect winter sneaker. But if you disagree, prove me wrong. What sneaker is better for winter? What shearling line sneaker does it better than this? And what would you change? Because there are some components that you could point to say, well, that's not the most premium material you could have used. There's better materials out there, like that leather board counter, like the fiberboard that backs the veg tan lasting board. But at the same time, we're trying to balance the price of it while keeping as much of the important materials as high quality as possible, while still making it somewhat affordable without losing any of the value and the durability and all the components and all the attributes you get from the wool and the Kudu and the veg tan lasting board, all while trying to balance in comfort and ease of breaking in. And that's what makes collaborations fun. That's what all the feedback and that's what all the combining two different contradictory things into a single boot is all about. It's part of what makes this so fun, but also what makes it so unique and why nobody else has really made anything close to this on the market. And you can see that progress that started all the way back when Goral was doing a Willet shoe series where they're making shoes out of random stuff. And I was like, hey, I got a vintage bomber jacket, let's make a pair of manly Uggs, to the Muggs 1 that we fixed the flaws, the gusseted tongue, the collar, all these things, to the Muggs 2 that we improved even more, the Muggs 3 we made more boot, more versatile, more, they can't discredit the slugs either. I'm offering you a nice slipper version. The biggest part of it is it's really helped me further my education as a reviewer by working so intimately with some of the top brands in the entire world, refining things millimeter by millimeter, choosing different lengths of shearling, all the different little intricate details that I would never learn as a reviewer, I learned from these collaborations. So thank you guys, it's literally a dream come true, and a huge shout out to Goral, but especially the guys and the team at Goral that has to make these, because it is not fun. That shearling and that wool gets everywhere, it's in their noses, it gums up their machine, and that's why we only do a small batch, and we only do a couple batches a year. So if you want a pair of slugs or Muggs 2 or Muggs 3, check them out via links in my description. If we're sold out, we only do those 2 drops a year, so make sure you're on that limited edition email list to know when the next drop is, and so that you can get that early access to guarantee yourself as much of a chance to get a pair of Muggs as possible. It's so cool to do this kind of stuff, so thank you. See ya.
Let's see how big your little noggin is. Yep, it's a big one for sure.